We're on the bottom of Kuf Samach Dalid Amid Aleph. Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel Omer. That's where we're up to. We have a sponsor for today's Daf Yomi, sponsored by Mr. Loiterman of Norfolk, Virginia, who happens to be my father.
Avi Mori.
That's right, Avi Mori. That's right, as we learned. And he listens to the Kahal Yereim Rabbi Loiterman Daf Yomi on a daily basis from Norfolk, Virginia. Thanks to our YouTube broadcasting. So thanks to our broadcasters for that. Very important to many people outside. Yeah. This is an international shiur. That is a great point. We are broadcasting internationally to an audience. Okay. Listen on a regular daily basis. Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel Omer. Mekushar ben Gamliel says that a shtar mekushar, which is the document when we write the contract, the one that's folded up, if you write the witnesses, right? We were writing the witnesses on the back for that one. That was required. Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel said, even if you write it on the front, that's going to be acceptable. And the reason why, if you remember when we folded up the paper, is that theoretically you can unfold it and then you just have a regular contract, right? The only difference, the distinction is the folds and things. If you undo those, then the contract looks like a regular contract, and you just put the witnesses on the bottom as well. So he holds that that's acceptable. So, Heishiv Rebbe. So Rebbe pointed out the following things. He says, "L'divrei Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel, according to Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel, we have a new issue, a new problem." Top of Kuf Samach Daled of the base. There is another distinction that we hadn't mentioned in our Mishnah between a get pashut and the shtar mekushar, and that is pashut malach shana monin lo shana. In a regular plain contract, when a king, when they have to date, the way they would date it is they didn't have an official year like we have, right? They would date it from the reign of the king that was leading at the time. So you had the first year of King so and so. So in a get pashut, if the person was king for a year, so then you would write monin lo shana. Then they would just write in his first year. Shtayim monin lo shtayim. In his second year, they would count the second year, and that would be simple enough. But a mekushar, and owing to the fact that we wanted to make it distinct and strange and all of these kinds of things, when it comes to a mekushar, malach shana monim lo shtayim. If he was a king for a year, we would say it's 2 years. And shtayim monim lo gimel. And if it was 2 years, we would say 3. So now, therefore, according to that, v'zimnin de yosef minei zuzi b'mekushar u'misrami le zuze beni beni u'parale. So he says, well, what might happen is v'amarle. Sorry, stop you. V'amarle havli shtaroi. So let's go back. Now I'm getting myself running too far. So he says like this. V'zimnin de Yosef Minezuze, right? What's going to happen is he's going to borrow money, right, with a mekushar, with the document that's mekushar. U'misrami lezuze beni beni, and then he's going to have enough money and he'll pay it off, right? U'parale, v'amar le, he's going to say havli shtaroi. So now, how do you wind up making sure that a contract doesn't get collected twice? When you pay, you ask for the contract in exchange for the payment. So the person who loans the money holds the contract, and then when the person pays, he gives the contract back. So he says, okay, now that I've paid, I want my contract back. So v'amar le irkosli. So he says, okay, I lost it, right? So I can't give it to you, but we'll know we paid or something like that. So now, kosef le tavra, and what he'll do is he'll write a receipt, because we don't want to double collect. Otherwise, this could happen at any time, right? A person say, I paid, I lost the contract, great, and I go home. Then the next day he comes and takes the contract out again and says, look, you owe me, I still have the contract. So how are you going to prevent that from happening? You write him a receipt. You say, you paid. So that way, if you come back at me and say, pay me again, I could take out the receipt and say, I already paid the loan. So that's what these folks did, right? They had the contract. It was a mekushar, and he paid. He said, give me the contract. He said, I don't have. He could. This is what we're saying. Theoretically, he could. could say, I don't have it. So they said, write me a receipt. Okay, he'll write him a receipt. So therefore, when the contract's real time comes, Mishavile get poshet. Now he's going to remove all the stitches, okay, and he's going to make it a regular contract. Amarle hashtahu diazaft minoi. Now is when you really borrow the money from me. So, in other words, because here's what happens, right? The distinction between the folded contract and the one that is laid out flat is that the year could be a year off, right? So imagine the circumstance. The guy says we're in year 1 of this king's reign, okay? And now that's really year 2 of his reign, right? Because it's the folded up contract. It was really year 2. They wrote year 1, but it was really year 2.
Yeah, because I remember you learning in Dushin, it talks about this. Like literally the day, if you come in the day of the end of the year.
That's right. Shtar Meuchar is not going to be
a
found.
whole year. So how much more back? They're saying basically a year that they weren't even.
They were pushing an extra year. Exactly. So that's right. So we're pushing an extra year. So now that's how he wrote the contract. It's in its 2nd year. So now they come and they go through this payment process, and he writes him a receipt, and the guy says, and he writes the receipt, I paid it. Okay, great. Now, a year later, right, he unfolds the document because he's still holding the document. A year later, he unfolds the document and he says, look, it's due now, right? I just bought, and he's going to pull out the receipts, right? But the receipt also has a date on it. So the receipt's going to say it was dated from last year. Well, I'm going to say, yeah, but the loan didn't really happen until a year later. This is a brand new loan because the one that you're showing me a receipt for is an old loan that you repaid. I agree. I loaned you money when it was the king's first year, and now we signed a receipt and indicated that was paid. Now it's his 2nd year. We unfold the document. 2nd year, we recollect from the same loan using the same contract. That's going to be the problem with Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel if you're going to be allowed to take a contract that's folded and turn it into a regular contract. Okay? So that's our problem. So now, kasavar inkosbin shover. So the answer is, he holds that we never allow to write a receipt, right? That would never be done. We would never accept payment from the receipt. Therefore, if the guy wants the payment, you got to be able to take the contract back. And that's how he avoids that problem, right? So he's got to go find his contract in order to be paid. Now, Umi Baki Rebbe Mekusher. Here's a question. This question on the concept of Mekusher is a pretty detailed question. Who asked it? Rebbe asked it, right? Problem is that Rebbe sounded like he wasn't really all that expert in the dealing with stars that were Mekusher. How so? V'hahu Mekusher to also Kamei de Rebbe. Remember the story we had? There was a star Mekusher that came before Rebbe. V'amar Rebbe star meuchar zeh. And so what happened is he said, hey, this contract is the date's wrong, right? He took a look and it said the 2nd year of the reign of the king, and it was still the 1st year of the king's reign. And so he said, this is a post-dated contract. And we know post-dated contracts are problematic. So V'amar le Zonin leRebbe, and then Zonin told Rebbe, Kach min hagashel umma. Zu, this is what the custom is in this place. Malach shana monin lo shtayim. It's kind of like long live the king kind of a thing. If he's in his 1st year, we say it's his 2nd year, right? Shtayim monin lo shalosh. If it's 2nd year, we're going to put it in the 3rd year. So therefore, how could you have Rebbe asking such a detailed question about the date on a contract when it seems from this story that Rebbe really wasn't all that expert on the whole way that these contracts worked, and it seems strange that Rebbe would be the one who asks this question when he himself didn't know that that's how it worked. So the answer is Basra disham mizonin savra. The answer is, yeah. Once he learned this rule from Zonin, then he knew the answer, and then therefore that was from later on in his life he knew to ask that question. So therefore, once Zonin told him, yeah, this is another one of these strange things about these contracts, then Rebbe did know that future, and then he added it in and was able to ask that question as well. Okay, let's say there's a contract, and it says in that contract, in the year of such and such, the year of so and so, Archon. Okay, now what does the word Archon mean? So, Amar Rabbi Chanina Yivdok Imasai Amad Archon. say we're going to establish at what point this person became the ruler. The word arkan here means that they are establishing him as the ruler. So whatever year is his establishment, that's the year that this is. So therefore, it's to consider whenever it says arkan, we assume that it means the first year of the person's range. Okay, the Dilma, maybe that's not what it means. The word arkan could have another meaning. Dilma de orich malchuse, maybe it just means long live the king. In which case, it's not really an establishment of any date, right? Amar of Hoshaya says, Kach min hagashalu mazu, shana rishona korin lo arkan. Says, no, but that is the method that they would use to write the dates. Okay, that was customary, and so therefore we know that's exactly what it means. If they wrote arkan, that means it's the first year. Shniya, if it was the second year, korin lo digon. They would call it digon. Digon means the second year. Okay, and this if you know your Greek, I guess, right? Di is 2, right? Tri is 3. That's how it goes, right? So digon. So arkan was the customary language and how they would use for the first year of the reign. Digon was the second year, right? Ark, right? That's good, right? Exactly, right. Arkan means like a monarch, right? Is that right? The ark. It's good. Vidilma avure, and this makes good sense because they're all probably from that linguistical time period that these phrases became about. Okay, and the Gemara is codifying them, saying that it was so common that these words spread that they became the natural language of contracts, despite the fact that most contracts you would presume were written in Hebrew or in Aramaic, but nevertheless, this was the common phraseology for the reign of the king. Okay, Vidilma avure avruhu, v'hadar ukmuhu. Okay, we're still going to have a problem with dating because even if you say it's in the first year of the reign, maybe Donald Trump got elected in 2016 and then he got elected again in 2024. So when you say it's the first year of his reign, do you mean 2016? Or do you mean, I guess 2017 or 2025 when they start? In the United States, they start in January the following year, right? So therefore, which year are we talking about? When you say the first year of his reign, it's still unclear which reign. So Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah says, Hahu Arkan Digon Karule. If he was in a second term, then they would call it the first year of term 2. They would put that into the contract. So therefore, if it just says first year, we presume it to be his first original term. But if it was his second term, they'd call it first year, second term. That's how they would phrase it. So
we have our own calendar. Wouldn't we use our data system on top of that?
It seems like that was uncommonly used. And that's a great question. So in all contracts, they always would date by the reign of the king. It's interesting to note that if you start doing the research into Jewish dates and things, that the Jewish dates potentially have some lost years in them. Potentially, it's a conversation for another. It's about 126 or so lost years. Yeah, and you want.
I was going to say, our dating system is also not, as you know, you have it, maybe it's like a month or so. The reason is because our dating system is not establishes in common use as well. It doesn't necessarily common use in the country or the world. You always know the thing of the country.
Correct. So that date was not very, and it seems as though potentially I would, if you want to believe in conspiracy theories, this is one that I sort of believe in. I believe that they were intentionally avoiding using those established Hebrew dates in order to add and change the year in the calendar. We'll explain potentially why. That they were hiding the potential end date for Mashiach, and our own count that we have nowadays is off. So today is not going to be the day to have that conversation. Maybe we'll have that conversation, right? About 130, about 120, 126, 128. But yeah, that's correct. So therefore, it could be the Chachamim were actually suppressing the use of the date after the Beis Hamikdash's destruction. Yeah. So
we were 130 years closer.
Yes. Yeah, we'll have a conversation. Okay. Good news. Good news. Okay, so I will. Rabbi Beryl Wine has an essay at the beginning of one of his books. I'm going to maybe that will bring that, and maybe that'll be the start of a conversation of tomorrow night's stuff. We'll have that.
A lot of people try to use this way to use the date as kind of shift because it's not that powerful.
So I believe they were potentially, not just that it wasn't used, but potentially that they were intentionally not using it, right? So that'll be a mission in Rosh Hashanah we'll discuss, right?
Well, it's not tricky because I was a bit like in Israel, but you're writing a check. Remember
Yep.
You could write, 5 Kislev.
Can you do that?
Apparently, you can.
I did not know.
Well, on a Canadian check?
No,
in Israel.
An Israeli check. It's a good question.
You can use the due date on a check.
All right. Yeah. Our dates are much more, we have calendars now, so it's much more clear what day and what year we're in, right? That was not necessarily so clear. Okay, Tana Rabbanan, Hareini Nazir. Let's say a person, since we're on the topic of how we count in Greek, right? If somebody would say, I believe it's Greek, Tana Rabbanan, Hareini Nazir, somebody says, I am a Nazir. So somebody establishes themselves as being a Nazir, they are not allowed to cut their hair for 30 days. They can't come in contact with the dead for 30 days.
Are they allowed to cut a star?
Yes, star is no limitations as far as that's concerned. But they can't come in. They cannot consume any grape product all during that time, 30 days, and then they have sacrifices they bring at the end. A regular Nazir period, you can establish yourself as a Nazir either for a lengthier time than that. You can say, not saying I am, so therefore this is just for illustration purposes, that I'm going to be a Nazir for 100 days. You could be a Nazir for 100 days. If that's the case, then for 100 straight days, you can't drink wine, you can't come in contact with the dead. However, another way to go about this is a person could say, so you could be guilty with somebody else, right? Or you could use bread, right? You'd have to find some other way, but that's a good point, right? You cannot use the grape products, right? So, right. So now, if a person says that I want to do multiple Nazirus, oaths, so then each one is 30 days, and then he serves them consecutively. So then what he would do is he'd have, let's say, a Nazir for 3 terms, so 30 days, then he breaks it and goes to the base of Mikdash, does a korban, and then does another 30 days. So 30 days, 30 days, 30 days, so he could have multiple Nazirus promises if that's what he wants to do. So those are the 2 ways he can go. He can either have an extended Nazirus, or he can have multiple 30 days. And this will be discussed in the Maseches Nazir and Yud Hashem, what, about 5.5 years or so. So, Sumchus Amar, Sumchus says, Hina, if he says the word Hina, this is now, much of the Masechta of Nazir deals with trying to interpret when a person makes a vow of some sort, and he uses language other than direct and clear language, what his meaning is. And his meaning is very important because you can't change it. You can't say, oh, I meant this afterwards, because it's what you actually said at the time you said it that makes a difference, right? Because that's going to drive what your actual obligations and limitations are. So you really have to understand what that phrase meant, right? So hina, so if you do hina achas, if you say hina, that means 1 term. Digon is shtayim, tregon is gimel, tetragon is arba, and pentagon is chamesh. Hectagon is going to be probably is right. It's going to be 6, right? So etc. As you can continue on, you know the rest. Similarly, Tana Rabban and Rabbi Zord, bias eagle. Let's say I have a house which is round, has no corners on it, circle house, or a digon, or a house that has 2 corners. And those who know geometry are going 2 corners, right? So you have a flat line and a half circle, right? So you have a half circle. That's how you have 2 corners, right? Tragon, is a house that has 3 corners, a triangle, right? Pentagon is a house that has 5 corners. And the Rashbam has a picture on the bottom just to illustrate what a house that has 5 corners would look like. It's in the bottom of your page right over there, right? 5 corners, right? When we say corner, it doesn't have to be right angles, right? It just means that that's correct. Yep. So that's your 5-sided house or 5-cornered house. So if you have that kind of a house, so enu metame minagayim, if it develops a nega, we call it in English the leprosy, but it's not, the tsaras that gets on the walls. So if it develops that, the house cannot become tameh with that. right? Does not matter.
How to clean it off though?
Well, you could remove the stones, right? You could scrub. I don't know if it comes off with scrubbing, but you could remove the stones. But you don't have to worry about the contents. You have to call a Kohen and have him inspect it and have it declared tamei and take all your things out. That whole process doesn't apply to houses that have that are circular, two walls, 3 walls, 5 walls. But a tetragon, but if it's a 4-walled, 4-cornered house, that's mitame v'negoim. That's the only kind of house. So a good idea, right? If you were thinking of constructing a house and wanting to make it tamei proof, right? Make a little extra thing in the corner in order to avoid the issue, right? The same thing is like if you want to avoid putting tzitzis on your coat, right? You cut a little corner or you round it off, right? Round one of the corners of your house off, and you don't have to worry about this issue, right? Just put a little rounding of the corner.
As long as it's less than 4, right?
As long as no, even more than 4. As long as it's not exactly 4. Remember, he says pentagon was one of the options. If it's a pentagon, matame.
Pentagon, okay, fine.
Right?
Aruba, 4. I thought
Tetragon is mitame minigoim. That's it. Only the 4. Only 4-sided, right? That's the only one. Minoni Mili, how do I know that? The Tana Rabbanan, our rabbis learned as follows. The Tana Rabbanan, Lemala Omer Kir Kiros. At the beginning of the parsha that talks about tzaras on houses, it says, and the pasuk says, "V'roes hanega," that will see the affliction on the house. V'hinei hanega bekiros abayis, and the affliction is on the walls of the house. And the word walls, it's already written in another place that there's an affliction on the walls. So here the word is extra, but not only is the word extra, but it's plural. So therefore, that you can see is to teach us 2 walls. And then that shtayim, lemat omer, then later on in Pasuk Lamed Tes, it says, Kir Kiros again. It says another time, it says the word Kiros, which is plural. V'shava kohen bayom hashvi, the kohen's going to come back on the 7th day. V'ra'ah, and he's going to see it. V'hinei pasah hanega bekiros, the nega has spread on the walls. Abayis. Now, I didn't have to say on the walls. That's the nega has spread. Period. I know where the nega is. You already told me where the nega is. So why does it say on the walls of the house? Again, that phrase is extra. So if I have the words walls, plural, twice, so that's shtayim, that's another 2. So harei kan arba, that's an implication the pasuk is telling me. Only if a house has 4 walls, then you're going to have a concern about this whole parsha about tzaras. If the house has any other amount of walls other than 4, then you don't have to worry about it. And by extension, then you have 4 walls, you have 4 quarters. Hahuma kusher. Now we're back to contracts. Those are side language, right? Word of the day. Hahuma kusher de'asa lekame de Rebbe. There was another circumstance where a contract that was all tied up came to Rebbe. I think this is the story that we from our Rebbe. Ein zman bazeh. We had this case. We had this story told us before that he couldn't find the dates. Rebbe was taking a look at this shtar makusher and was bothered by it, and it did not have a date on it. Amar le Reb Shimon l'Rebbe. So Rabbi Shimon, his son, was there in the court, and he said to his father, Shema ben Ksharav Muvla. So he says maybe the signature got caught in between, right? I guess they must have tied it up or tied it in such a way they couldn't see the signatures on it. So, yeah, between the, which is not where we said that it would normally be or so. So I guess the Rebbe was looking for where the witnesses were signed on it, and they had signed in such a way that once the contract was all stapled, well, we had when we had shown it, right, we wrote on the back. Then at the end, when they had sewn the whole thing up, so it's possible that the contract was covering the signatures. And so Rebbe was looking at this contract, and going, this thing has got no witnesses on it. So Palyeh v'chazye, so they unwrapped the contract, and they saw that the witnesses were there. Hadar chaza be Rebbe bebishus. So then Rabbi Shimon saw that Rebbe was looking pretty upset about the whole circumstance. This Shtar Kusher business is confusing. That's the bottom line for Rebbe. He doesn't like the date problems. He doesn't like the witness problems. He doesn't like this whole thing. It's unnecessary. Why complicate your shtaros? So he's looking askance at his son, who told him how to find the witnesses, and he figures his son has got something to do with this contract. Amar le, his son said to him, Lav ana kasve kasav say, I didn't write it. Don't look at me. It's not my fault. Rabbi Yehuda Chayta kasve. Rabbi Yehuda Chayta is the one who wrote this contract. He got into the shtaros, and he wrote this fancy shtar. Amar le, so Rebbe said back to his son, Kalech mi lashon hara. Don't speak lashon hara. Chas v'shalom, don't speak lashon hara.
That's what I'm speaking at 3 times.
Yes, don't speak lashon hara. Now it's interesting. Is it really that bad lashon hara? He told him he wrote a contract. Nice shtar mekushar. That's what he wrote. But the answer is, based on context, Rabbi was upset, didn't appreciate these shtar mekushas, and so therefore he knew that it was lashon hara. And we're going to see that the Gemara is going to talk about avak lashon hara, which is really where we're dealing with. The words itself may not be bad, right? He didn't say that Rabbi Yehuda Chaita is forging documents. That's not what he said. He said that Rabbi Yehuda Chaita wrote a shtar mekushar. Period. You'd look and say there's no lashon hara there. Says Rabbi to his son, that is lashon hara based on the idea that you know that I'm not in a good mood about shtar mekushars, shtaros mekusharos. So therefore, I'm looking at this in a negative way. Now's not the time to bring up who it is, right? Just say I didn't write it. That would be sufficient, right? Zimnin hava Yosef Kameh. Another time, he was sitting in front of him, the Kapasik Sidra b'Sefer Tehillim, and he was finishing one of the books of Tehillim, going through the books of Tehillim, and he was going through the books of Tehillim. Amar Rebbe said, "Kama miyushar ksav zeh." Look, this is such beautiful writing. This Sefer Tehillim is so nice. Look at how they wrote it. Everything's handwritten back then, right? Look at the Sofer who wrote this did a really nice job. Amar Le, so his son said to him, "Lav ana kasav say, I didn't write it. Yehuda Chaita kasvei. Rabbi Yehuda Chaita wrote this beautiful Tehillim." Amar Le, his father said to him, "Kalech mi lashon hara hazeh." Why are you talking lashon hara? Ryan, he always knows the next question. What's the lashon hara? Bishlama hasam. Okay, I understand in the first case. Ika lashon hara. I understand where the lashon hara was, and everybody was upset about the shtar mekushar, and he jumped in and he said that it wasn't him. Okay, Elohacham my lashon hara. But here, what's the lashon hara? Where's the lashon hara? So the answer is Mishum de Rav Dimi. It comes from what Rav Dimi says. The Tani Rav Dimi. Rav Dimi learns Achud Rav Safra. He was the brother of Rav Safra. Liolam al Yisaper Adam Betova Social Chavero. A person should not say nice things about his friend. Shemitoch Tovaso Bali De Ra'aso. Because if you say nice things, somebody's going to say something negative. Now, where are the boundaries for that? It means I can never compliment anybody, right? I come home and I say to my wife, the food is so delicious, and your kid might say, I don't like it, and so therefore I can't say it. Like, where's the boundary here, right? So the answer is it has to be in sort of a circumstance where you know that such a concern exists, that there's somebody here who already sort of has problems with this character, or yeah. So yeah.
You're saying what he said. He's saying specifically. He's saying that Rabbi Yehuda did this. He's saying a third party.
That's true. Compliment the person rather than talk about the person. That's true.
That's a very big difference.
Yep, true.
No, but also it sounds like he's a and the Rav gave a compliment, and he said it wasn't me, it was him.
Which is the biggest thing when I was preparing this. I'm like, whoa, wait a second. Think about this picture here. Rebbe is there.
Right.
His son is there. The two of them are by themselves. Okay. His son says to Rebbe, "This is a beautiful Megillah. I didn't write it." Rebbe turns back to him and says, "That's lashon hara." Well, who's the person who's going to say something negative?
Like he said, right. I didn't write it. Rabbi Yehuda wrote it. He said, "I didn't write it," but the person.
No, but I'm saying, but what's Rebbe think? What's Rebbe saying? Rebbe's saying, Rebbe Shimon, you can't say this because what? I'm going to speak lashon hara.
It's possible. The possibility is that if you look at the next page of the film, and there's a mistake.
Right, not so nice, right?
Now, and not circle.
Right, very possible. Or Rebbe,
he's putting himself in a situation,
right? Or Rebbe is saying that the isser of avak lashon hara doesn't depend on if somebody actually says anything. It's inappropriate for you to say it out anyway, right? In other words, it doesn't become avak lashon. If I say something, I compliment somebody, right? And then somebody else jumps in and says something negative, then it's avak lashon hara because I caused it. No. Even if everybody is behaved and you have no chash, everybody here's a big tzaddik and nobody's going to say anything.
It could set up.
You can't do that anyway. That is avak lashon hara. That's a bad way for you to speak. And he's telling his son, don't speak that way. Now, in this conversation with me and you, I'm not going to say anything. Nevertheless, that idea that you're going to compliment somebody in front of somebody else, that you should not be in habit of doing. He's educating his son. Don't talk that way. Don't do that because it will come and have a problem in the future. That by itself is avak lashon hara.
Is it because it's something that could be criticized later? Like, let's say, meaning, if he complimented the Rav, it would have been fine. But it's because it's something else that the person would be like, oh, he wrote this, and then somebody else could find something wrong with it, and that leads to lashon hara. So it's like you compliment someone alone.
It seems like because the Gemara has a context here, right? The Gemara.
And where is the borderline between pursuing it? So I want, Rabbi Yehuda wrote it. He's the best source for it. Go. You want for yourself. Go right by him.
Right.
That's right. You want a
good advertising, right?
That's pursuing.
Best shtaros, right?
Right. So where's the border of it? Where is the end of it?
Yes. So those who want to know the study in depth, Sefer Chofetz Chaim goes through this in great detail of the concept of Hava Lashon Hara and when you can speak positively about a person in front of others and what the boundaries of this rule are. But this is the source of it. What's nice about you learn through, right? You've heard this 100 times, right? You've heard this one little line. That's the source of the whole thing right here in the Gemara.
This one little line, I've learned about. I just didn't know. Like this one didn't make sense to me because there's nobody else around.
That's correct.
Right.
That's what the
There's
source
no one
is.
else around.
There's nobody else in the story. It wasn't like
Right.
I was at a board meeting and I said the architect is awesome and somebody
Right.
else has something that they want to say, right?
That's what I was.
There you go. Amar Rav Amram Amar Rav. Rav Amram says in the name of Rav, Shalosh Averos in Odom Nitzol Mehen Bechol Yom. There are 3 Averos that a person cannot be saved from every day. Sorry, this is how much you try. These are 3 Averos that you're going to get involved with every single day. First one is Hirhor Avera. Your mind is going to wander to inappropriate thoughts, right? That's just unavoidable. Second of all, Ve'iyun Tefillah, says the Rashbam. What's Iyun Tefillah? Iyun Tefillah is that a person davens and he thinks I did such an amazing job. Hashem is definitely going to answer me, right? It's a certain amount of haughtiness, right? To think Hashem's going to answer me. Now, I was thinking about that. So what's so big deal? The answer is because then when Hashem doesn't, or the answer is no, what do you think? Hashem is at fault. I had an amazing job davening. Hashem doesn't listen to my tefillos. There's no point in davening anymore because Hashem didn't listen to me. I davened for a sick person. The person died anyway. There's no point in it. So, yeah. All I'm saying is, right, Iyun Tefillah is the Avera, right? Now, a person has to be careful of this, right? A person cannot be in the situation where you daven in a situation and you create the circumstance where you feel so an expectation that you're going to be answered. That's a problem. Now, other Mefarshim explain Iyun Tefillah is just the general lack of concentration in davening, right? Now, sometimes we space out in davening, as we used to say, that I was walking down the streets, and when I was in Eretz Yisrael, I was walking down the streets in Ben Yehuda, and I was enjoying the shops, and I was going to go buy something, and all of a sudden, I feel a big sharp sock on my chest, and I looked down and realized I was in the middle of Shemona Esrei daydreaming, and that was me. Right? That's you have to watch out for this, right? So Iyun Tefillah, but that's other Mefarshim. The Lashon Hara, and the third one is Lashon Hara. Lashon Hara, you have a problem with Lashon Hara every single day. Lashon Hara, Sal Kadai says, what do you mean Lashon Hara? Really? We can't not speak badly about people every single day. I speak Lashon Hara. So it wasn't such a big question to me, right? Well, unfortunately, it made a little bit of sense. But the answer is Ella Avak Lashon Hara. The answer is not real Lashon Hara. Avak Lashon Hara. This kind of Lashon Hara we've been dealing with, which is not necessarily you say bad things, but you say it in a way. You give you hint at something, right? That's exactly right. All the examples that we had. So those are problems. So that's where it is. Amar Yehuda, Amar Rav, Rabbi says Rav, Rov Begezel. He says, here's what you need to know. Most people have a problem with stealing. What does that mean? That means you give somebody an opportunity in business to take advantage of somebody else. Most people will, right? Can I cheat on my taxes? Will I? Did I get a little bit extra? Most people will have to worry about them taking advantage and stealing. Umiyut barayas, a few people, but most people not. You have to worry about whether they're going to be involved in inappropriate relationships. That's not the majority of people. That's a small number of people. Vehakol b'lashon hara, but everybody is involved in lashon hara. B'lashon hara sal kadaita. What do you mean? Everybody's involved in lashon hara? El avak lashon hara. What we mean is avak lashon hara is very, very potentially harmful.
We're having a conversation. We don't know we're thinking lashon hara, but thinking without.
That there you go. Okay. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Omer Hakol Keminag Medina. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, as far as writing a shtar mekushar or a get pashut, as we called them. So it's all according to the custom. But Tanakama, what do you mean the Tanakama disagrees with him? The custom is that I'm going to write a shtar mekushar, then we're going to not listen to him? Like, what is the argument? So Amar Rashi says, the Asri de Nihigi Poshut, what happens is, let's say I had a country, and in this place, like we have here, everybody writes the basic contract. Okay? Vamarle Avidli Poshut, and he says, I would like a shtar Poshut. I just want the regular contract. The Uzal and the sofer goes, Avad le mekushar, and he makes a mekushar. Or I guess not the contract, but the lender, right? The lender makes for the borrower. He says, I want to use a mekushar, kepeda. So then that he can be mocked on. That he can say, no way, this contract is not what I wanted. That's not how I want it to be. Nehigi mekushar, if the custom in the place is that that everybody's using the tied up type of contract. V'amar le avidli mekushar, and he says, that's how I want it to be. The azo avid le pashut, and he decides he's going to, and the lender says, I want to write the plain regular one. Kapeda, he can also disagree with that. Because again, he's violating what is the regular custom of the country. And nobody argues with that. The Tanakama and Rabbi Shimon Gamliel both agree that that's the case, right? If the guy wants to go by what the custom of the country is, of course you have to. That's for sure. Kipligi, the argument is like this. Let's say the country normal procedure is writing a regular contract. Umekushar, or they also do the other one. They sometimes do the tying up one, so they do it both ways. V'amar, and this guy says, Avadli Pashat. This guy says, I want a regular plain contract. I don't want with all the difficulties. V'azav avad le mekushar, and the other guy, the lender, comes along and he makes him a tied up contract. So this is where the argument is. Mar savar kepeda. One says everything goes. The first opinion says, look, he said that's what he wanted. If that's what he said, that's what he wanted, then that's what you've got to give him, right? You have to do it the way he said, because both were acceptable in this country. That's what he said he wanted. Umar savar mara makom hulo. The other one says, no, whatever the country wants, either one is acceptable. So why did he say he wanted the plain one? He was just giving an example. Okay, so now comes into this issue, which we're going to discuss next, is this concept of when I say something, do I mean what I'm saying, or am I just using it as an example? In this circumstance, that's what they're arguing about. When the person says, I just want a plain contract. Is he saying he specifically wants a plain contract? Or is he saying a plain contract is fine, also the other one is fine, right? Just a plain contract is also fine. So that's going to be the argument. What is it when the person says one of the choices, does he mean specifically that choice? Or he's just saying, for example, this will work for me. So, Amar Abai says, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Elazar, Kulu Spirulin Mara Makom Hulo. There are three people, right? Abai is telling us Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Elazar, all of them in certain places in Shas, we find that they all agree that when a person uses as an example, he says, I want this, he doesn't mean this and not the other. He just means, for example, this is what I want. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Hadam, Rabbi Shimon was right here. This is the one we said right here, because he said, I want a plain contract, but he didn't mean not the other one. He was just saying, I'd like a plain contract, it's fine. If you give me the other one, that's also fine. Rabbi Shimon, it's not. Rabbi Shimon, we have a Mishnah. He says, Rabbi Shimon Omer, im hita l'shvach harezu mikudeshes. Let's say a lady says, she says she's, they didn't, it wasn't so easy to travel. And the future husband, right, is going to be traveling through a city, and she's not there, but she says, you know what? I'm going to send my messenger to collect the money for the Kiddushin. Okay. So what does she say? Okay. She says, I'd like you to collect my silver dinar, please. Right. That he's going to be giving. That'll be on behalf of me for a marriage. So the guy is the shaliach. What happens? He gets there and the husband gives him a gold dinar instead. So when she said silver, did she mean, no, I specifically want silver? Or was she saying, for example, silver, if he gives gold, that's also good, right? What did he mean? So Rabbi Shimon says, if the mistake is in her favor, then she's married, meaning it's not a mistake. But if the change is in her favor, then of course she's okay with it. I presume that she'd be fine. She was okay with silver. She got gold. Now, if she said, I specifically want gold, and he comes in with silver, then we can say, yeah, she was specific, right? Because she was specific. She wanted the higher price thing. But if he comes in, if she says a silver is fine for me, and he comes in with gold, she was not being specific. She's just giving an example. Okay?
Can I ask a couple questions?
Sure.
Going back, kulo means that everybody agrees. Is it like
All of
we
these
almost,
three opinions,
right, agree that it's
not
it
all,
goes
not
by the
everybody.
makom. It goes by the makom.
No, mar and mako means he's
Mar.
showing him an example, showing him a place,
Oh, okay,
right?
fine.
Showing him a place.
I'm assuming my wife won't watch this.
Yeah.
But silver to gold could be a big difference for a woman specifically because the fact that if she has silver, I want silver, it could be she has a very specific intent.
Could
She
be.
wants to melt it down and
That
make something out of it.
Could be, right? And that's what and that's what Shimon says, but we presume not, right? But others argue with him, right? That's why it's machlokas. Others argue and say, no, if she specified, then that has to be what it is. And if he is a shliach, accept something other than what she said, then he's not a shliach.
That's what Shlomo, you come home, your wife says to you, bring
My
home the
wife-
dishwasher detergent, the tabs.
I don't understand.
No,
My wife
bring
sent
up
me to the
container.
store.
That's
She
the
told
thing.
me,
It's
she
not
told me
right.
she told me to get milk. She told me to get sugar. I came home with ice cream. It had everything in there. And she was upset at me, and I don't understand. Right?
Exactly.
all the time. But Haredi Mekudeshes, I thought the man is Haredi Mekudeshes Louis.
Yep.
I'm sorry, this.
Yep.
She's saying she's accepting it, but he didn't. Isn't that? I know I don't want to jump into a completely different topic, but
She's
I don't
accepted.
understand how she could accept it if he's already
No, she told him in advance. The instructions are
right.
go get you're going to get this. Now the question is, what is the meaning of her instructions? Do the instructions include silver and up, or specifically silver?
Right.
Right? That's the issue. Rabbi Elazar Ditznan. Rabbi Elazar, we had another mission, and he's like this. Ha'isha sha'amra hiskabel ligiti mimokum ploni. She says, do me a favor. I want you to go to Ottawa and get my get for me. Okay? My husband, my ex, he lives up in Ottawa, and I'm down here in Toronto. Do me a favor. You go up to Ottawa and get my get for me. Okay? V'kiblu lo mimokum acher. What happens? Turns out that he's on a trip in Montreal. Well, that's okay. The shliach didn't mind because he was stopping in Ottawa on his way to Montreal anyway. So he went to Montreal, met the ex-husband there, and got the get in Montreal. Is that okay? So the thing is that she said Ottawa, but the get was collected in Montreal. Was she saying, I specifically want you to get my get in Ottawa? Or was she giving an example? Go to Ottawa and get the get. If it's not in Ottawa, go to Montreal. I don't mind.
Intent on the get, was there intent on the location?
So the question is when she said the location, this is again Maramakum, was when she said the location, did she mean to exclude other locations? Or was she just giving an example of the most likely location? Right? So then in that circumstance, so if she says, according to the Tanakama, she says, Hiskabeli giti mimokum ploni v'kiblo mimokum acher, puzzle, the get is puzzle. Right? However, Rabbi Elazar says, nope, that's fine. Mar Savar Kapeda, one says, no, she was being very specific. She's thinking to herself, if that guy is back in Ottawa, where he's always doing such and such and I don't like it, I want my get. Not if he's other place. If he just happens to be in Montreal doing something else, I don't mind so much. But if he's in Ottawa, I want that get, right? Okay? Or Mar Savar Maramakum Hulo, that she's only saying this is where he is. Okay? We're going to stop here at the two dots. We're going to get to 8:55.
Beautiful.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.